everybody. My name is Cyrus Hurley. I am going to be the host and participant of this discussion. We're going to go ahead and get started. This morning we did this session. We had a full house. This afternoon we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to try to pick up on some of the points. I know some folks asked me if we could pick up where we left off, but we'll go from the beginning and go through it. But this is how to start a VDI project. We have a couple of guys with us here. We got Glenn Highstead from High Point. He's the assistant IT director there. And we have Stephen Cross with Wayne County. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to tell you what we've done, and we're going to let you guys ask us questions. We're going to ask each other questions. And we're going to try to understand what it takes to get a VDI project started. Stephen's got a whole lot of great information on his iPad. I think he might pass that around in a few minutes. And let's just see what we can get done. Basically, we don't really have the slideshow for this. We have, I put together 10 topics that I wanted to discuss, and these were 10 topics. These are the 10 things that people tend to mess up on. So these are the things that I feel we should look at. And during this, we're going to get sidetracked and stuff. So anyway, like I was getting ready to have a football tournament. So one of the things that, and I'm going to do this in a different order, in fact, if that's okay. I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to start with number 10 and go up. So one of the biggest things for us is storage. You have to make sure that you have storage on the back end. It has to be available. We have 10 gigabits on the 10 gigabit network on the back end that attaches to those storage. We actually implemented a compellent SAN, and we didn't do any solid state drives or anything like that, but we have enough space and enough 15,000 RPM drives so that we can have a lot of fast disk access for provisioning, for our provision disks and things like that. When it comes to virtual desktops alone, when you're using provisioning server, it's good to have a lot of cache available to those disks, and it's best practice to have those cache pushed out to hardware, to the local drives of the virtual machines. So that means you have to attach solid disks into the virtual machines from the SAN. So that does eat up more space than what you typically would have. You guys want to weigh in on your storage?
Well, in regards to virtualization, obviously you have to have a storage area network. Without it, there's just no way you can do it. We started out about 4 years ago when we were looking at virtualizing our servers, and we ended up buying an EMC SAN, and we went with an all fiber channel drives, and we have an all fiber network, and we own all of our own fiber in all of our facilities. So the speed of our virtual environment is, I think it's unmatched. Even Citrix said they haven't seen one like ours. So anybody that would like to see a very efficient virtualized infrastructure and how fast our environment is, it's just amazing to me. And you're welcome to come and visit Wayne County. I have some very, very good technicians there too that are pretty amazing. Very knowledgeable in this stuff. We've been doing it like 4 years now. We virtualize our service now. We've done our desktops about 400. We've got about another, well, we're going to virtualize over 1,000 users, but we're going to end up with about 800 thin clients. We've got about 400 deployed now. We've literally gotten rid of our desktops. And they're considerably faster than a desktop. Very efficient. And what I was going to do is, this right here is our virtual environment. I got it on my iPad through Citrix receiver. This is called a published desktop. It's very inexpensive compared to a VDI solution, which would be like VMware View or Zen Desktop. We use Zen app to publish the desktop. And just, I want to go into it. I don't know if you want me to go into this a little bit. But Zen app, when you publish a desktop, basically they're only seeing the image of that desktop from your server, and all the apps get processed on your server. You're basically just seeing the images. So it's very fast, very efficient, doesn't use much resources. When you publish a VDI, like Zen Desktop or a VMware View, you're publishing an entire desktop to the end user. So there's a significant difference. This is very fast. The end user, it looks very similar to an XP desktop. It's also much more cost effective because you don't have to pay Microsoft that $100 per device for using the published desktop, because you're not publishing an individual desktop to each user. I can connect with my iPad to the entire desktop, or I can connect in, and the desktop is just an icon. So if I want to go to my entire XP or Server 2003 desktop, I just click on that, and I have the desktop like I would if I was sitting in my computer. But if I want to just go in and execute a Word, or I need to go take time for one of my employees, or I need to do anything remote into a computer, I can do all of that individually. And it's all, whatever I do at work, I can do it very easy. I can do it here, I can do it anywhere. It's really good.
You know, this is going to go by fast this afternoon because we don't have a lot of people, but please feel free to ask questions or interject. Yes, sir.
What kind of applications are you running on? You just run basic, Office, or
No.
or what about like CAD programs? We had talked about doing something like that, but one of the things that came up were the power users who would probably not want to go to a virtualized environment.
Let me tell you, I'm a power user. I have technicians that are probably considered power users compared to most network technicians. And we are able to use most of our applications through that environment. We're not limited. The end user, you may want to put, if you virtualize that user, you might not want to put a thin client. You might want to virtualize using a desktop so they have processing power, or a high-end thin client. But that's not really going to affect, with GIS, they told us the same with GIS. We virtualized GIS and it's 10 times faster than it was on a server, on a regular standard server. GIS told us they weren't going to support virtualization 4 years ago. I said, we're going to do it anyways, because I knew it was efficient. I knew it was fast. When we did it, now everybody's following suit. And everybody's virtualizing GIS.
So we had trouble virtualizing 10. We couldn't get 10 to work in our environment that were U10.
I'm not sure. I'd have to ask.
10 we had problems with. Here's the thing, right? If you can get it to work, you can get it in there, it's faster, right? You can get AutoCAD in the environment. We had a little trouble with some of the add-ons some of our departments were using. We couldn't get it working with the add-ons. But of course, we've got to revisit that. We've really spent just a cursory amount of time. We'll try for a little bit. Now we can't. Okay, let's move on to another department to keep the rollout rolling. So we are going to circle back around and hit some of these with more resources to try to get that in. But I will tell you this: if you get it in there, it's faster. And actually, the bigger the application, the more dramatic the increase in speed. So like your Office and things like that are going to be faster. Yes, they're noticeably faster. But when you have CAD running on server hardware, as opposed to whatever you can throw at the desktop, it's going to be significantly faster. Especially spun off of, like we're going to have it on SAS drives, real fast SAS drives, on our NetApp SAN. We use NetApp SAN. Actually, back to the storage, that was a problem too. So while we had the space, the performance on the SAN wasn't there because we were reaching end of life. So you have to make sure that you're aware of the performance and where everything's hitting as far as the CPUs on SAN. But if you can get it in there, it's faster.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work.
It does.
You've got to put out the effort. You can't, anybody, Citrix, anybody that comes into your organization, I don't care if they've been doing virtualization for 20 years, if they come into your organization and say, hey, if you don't get an ROI in 6 months, you can't do it. I was actually told that by Citrix, and I was like, get out of here. Get out of my conference room. I have a 5-year plan, not a 6-month plan. And I actually have proven with actual numbers we were in a position in Wayne County where our desktops, our newest ones were about 6 years old when I started. So we had some that were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. We have a lot, the majority of the ones that are left are very old. So when we put our desktop solution in there, I mean a thin client solution in there, it was so much faster than what they had. It was so easy for us to implement it because everybody was happy because everything was running so much faster. But you have to set up a long period of time, in my opinion. When I first started this, I was told do it all or nothing. Do everything, just get it knocked out. You don't want to get stuck 50-50 and all that stuff. We're 50-50 right now, and we're running perfect. Not even a problem. We have a 5-year plan. We're in year 3, and let me tell you, after the second year, we had so many problems with so many different applications trying to get them to work because we were learning the environment. We're learning how everything works. And it's going to take you time to actually learn this new environment. It's completely different from your standard way of doing business. But once you learn all the little tricks, and once you start learning NetScaler and all these other things that your staff are going to be using, there's almost nothing you can't do, especially in a Citrix environment because of the application virtualization. And like I said, 2 years into it, we had barely deployed 25 users. And the reason why was I wasn't going to deploy them until the stuff was working right. I didn't want to deploy, virtualize the users and not have them, and then have them have a bad experience. So we tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it. I ended up having to bring Citrix back in, and they showed us some really good tricks. The published desktop was amazing because that enabled us to use our printers and without having to do a third-party print solution. We're able to do all of that in-house without having to do all that external stuff. Anyways, when we finally got everything tweaked and everything seemed to be running great, we started deploying to the end users department by department. I would say in the last 6 months we deployed over 300 thin clients, and we did it very easy. We've got other major projects going on. We get the election going on. We've got major facilities construction that we're designing all the infrastructure for. We have all these other things going on, and we're still able to deploy. We have over 400 thin clients deployed today. In our infrastructure, we have 10 servers. That's it. 10 servers. They're HP DL 380 G6s. And we have 2 NetScalers. So we have 12 servers in the entire environment. And the reason why we only have 12 is because we're using Citrix Zen app. If we use Citrix Zen desktop, if we VMware View, you can guarantee double that, at least double that infrastructure for what you'd have to put in place to support it. So I did a lot of research before we started doing this, and I decided that Zen app was definitely the way I wanted to go, and thin clients were the way I wanted to go. I didn't want any management of the devices at all. I didn't want to have to go back and you know, even if you virtualize a desktop, you still have some management of that desktop. And I've got some information. I know, you know, there's so many things you could go into when you're doing a virtual environment. There's so many things to consider. You have to have very good staff. If you don't have a very talented staff, don't even attempt Zen app. Stay away from it. And I say that because I have a very, very unusually talented staff, and they're very, very good.
Speaking of the staff, are you not moving your support from the basic help desk staff to your network and your analysts?
Yeah, there's also consultants, there's also partners. He's right, there's an extremely steep learning curve. And to do the training ahead of time and to try to do it yourself is going to be a problem. It's extremely complex. You need people that have had the problems, that have done the, that have stuff blown up on them before and got through it to be able to get through this and make it successful.
With me, I know I have my two senior engineers. They've been in the county about 15 years. They're never going to leave. They just love it there. I give them free reign. They don't specialize in storage or servers or management or anything. They specialize in everything, project management to you name it. They have their hands in everything, and they love it there. They know if they go somewhere else, they're not going to have that. So they want to stay. So when you have that, you also get a lot of stability. I know I can do projects like this. They're not going to leave right in the middle of it, and I'm going to get stuck. You don't want to run into that, because if you do, you're going to be in big trouble. But if you can spread this out over a period of time, and you take it slow, and you learn the environment, and before you just push it out. Somebody else was telling me they've been just like used users to virtualize, but they're running into problems because all the different departments have different apps. And I said, pick one department, survey their applications, look at the applications that they are critical to them that they have to have, and then make a determination on how you're going to virtualize them. And that's what we did, department by department by department. Majority of the departments, they use Microsoft Office, 2010 or 2003. They use Internet Explorer 6, 7, or 8, but mainly 6 and 8. So, you know, we were able to go department by department and virtualize the departments, and we ran into far less problems because you know exactly what you have to deal with in that department, and you don't virtualize anybody in that department until you get everything working. And then once you do, then you just push it out to them.
I know you said that I guess the user are happy with the performance and all that. Did you run into any resistance as far as what you're limiting them to? I mean, are you pushing a standard desktop to them every time? Or are they able to customize their own?
Tell you what, when you deploy desktop as an app, there's a couple things as opposed to VDI, right? You mentioned the cost involved in the back end. There's also significantly more licensing costs. When you deploy desktop as an app, they can still have a picture of their grandkids on the background. They can still have all of their icons. And the best part about it is, when they go home and they log in, it's the same. When they log in the training room, it's the same. When they, it doesn't matter, they log in a public access terminal somewhere in a library because they're on vacation and they got a phone call, it's the same. So it's the identical environment no matter where they are. So yes, you can do all that thing. You can lock it down real tight. You can make a kiosk, you know, and lock it down so it can't do anything but what I want it to do. Or you can open it up so I can stick a USB device in and get data off of it to present. Or I can attach to the local hard drive and see the data on the local hard drive and save things locally if I so desire. You know, you can go as far down that road as you want. The problem that you have is if they currently have administrative rights, that's not going to work. They're not going to be able to install software in this environment. We had already fought that battle years ago. Not a problem, though. So it was easier for us. But if you roll it out, they don't have Windows 7 yet, and you roll this out to them, okay, they're going to roll with it, just like they roll with the new OS install. It looks a little different. It's really Windows 2008 with a Windows 7 whitewash on it. You know, it'll look a little different. But they'll roll with it. It's a new OS, just like it happens to them whenever the replacement cycle comes around.
The thing with us, we didn't run into that problem per se. I mean, we had a couple of users. The county manager's secretary did not like the fact she couldn't put her puppy pictures on the desktop. She got really upset and she said, "I don't want this." I said, "You're getting it whether you like it or not." You know, I mean, fortunately, I sit on the executive team with the county manager, so I said, "Hey, I know she's going to be pissed, but I'm going to do this because I know," she said, "as long as I have my puppy pictures," that's what she told me, and I was like, you know what, we all have to make sacrifices. Put a picture on your desk. You know, I mean, as far as what our when I say mission, I was in the Air Force 21 years. Our mission isn't to have puppy pictures or family pictures on your desktop. You're there to do a job. You're not there to stare at your desktop. You can bring a picture in if you want to do that.
Although you
can
can
your
allow
iPad in, your iPhone. I mean, everybody has that stuff. It's a paradigm shift. That's what I like to use that term because people are used to doing things a certain way. Mobile technology now, in a few years, there won't be desktops. I mean, everybody can see that's the way it's going, right? You're not going to have a standard desktop computer. A thin client for us is just another move closer to completely eliminating desktops. You could steal one of our thin clients, and you got a paperweight if you can't get into our environment. You know,
They'll
there's
bring it
nothing
back.
stored on it.
They'll bring it back, go, what the heck is
Yeah,
this?
yeah. But the thing is, in this environment, if you want performance is the most important thing. If I give you a desktop and you click on Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, you know, whatever applications you have, and they execute instantly, it's a much better experience than you're going to get from a desktop PC. We had a user that said, "Oh, this is so much slower, you know, when you first turn it on." I said, "Okay, let's sit down there." We put a desktop computer in there that was fairly new desktop. We put a thin client. We turned both of them on. We had one user sitting there. When it came to the login screens, they would log in. This user already had logged in, signed in on their timesheet, and started working in their state application before this computer was actually displaying the desktop. So it's much faster, especially on boot up and all that stuff. But you don't want to have background. We could give them background images. We could do that. But in a virtual environment, every time a user logs in, their profile goes off of the system, their profile gets deleted. So when they come back in and sign in the next morning, their profile gets copied back into their, you know, it's basically it's stored in memory. But it takes a little bit of time to do that. It takes a few seconds. So the more stuff that's in that profile, the longer it's going to take to load up. So if you have pictures and images and background images and all these other things, and you let them do screensaver, you know, what you're doing is you're hurting yourself because the performance is going to suffer. So right from the get-go, we said, no, we're not going to allow people to do any of that. We're going to give them exactly what they need, and we're going to control all that other stuff.
With your rooming profiles, are you including my documents in your rooming profiles as well? Or
All of our profiles, and that's a good question, because the important thing for us, all of our profiles were stored on our server for all of our users, 1,000+ users. They never had a profile stored on their computer. So when we virtualized, it was there was no problem for us at all, because they were already stored out there. So all we do is we limit the amount of space they can have as far as mail, things like that. But they don't know any difference. They can right-click, create a shortcut on their desktop. They can, do stuff like that. They can, when they save or create new documents and save them and all that stuff, it gets saved into their profile just like it always did. They don't see any difference at all.
Think roaming profile.
Sorry?
Think roaming profile.
Yeah, with our rooming profile, we had to start going through and disabling it, because it was taking 10 minutes or so, which they had a lot of junk in there.
Think redirect.
Yeah, redirect the profile is probably a more accurate
You know,
analogy.
their profiles, I mean, on our infrastructure, everything is, tie-in equipment. So when they log in, they're logging into, a quad-core processor, 72 gig of RAM. I mean, and we allocate X number of RAM for each server and all that stuff. But it's so fast, they don't have any problems at all with performance. The only time it bogs down a little bit is 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. because everybody's coming in, everybody's going home, and they're all logging into their timesheets at exactly the same time. Everybody, because in the counties, I'm sure it's the same in the city, everybody comes in and leaves at the same time. They don't stay a minute over. They're out of there. So we do have the system does get bogged down at those times, but other than that.
Are y'all running Cat 5, Cat 6, or what today?
All of our new facilities, new construction are Cat 6, everything else is Cat.
You've got some terminals running Cat 5.
The majority of them, yeah.
The most important part of your network infrastructure is that. Out the front, it's so thin on the wire. The Citrix client, you're going to see less overall network utilization.
Just make sure you don't have Cat 3.
Cat 3 is bad. You mentioned boot storms. You wanted to.
It's on the list on number 6, boot storms. This is exactly what he's talking about. So you have things that every morning people come in at the same time. So that's all that network traffic hitting at that time, and then when they're logging off and doing other things, the network gets really congested. So to manage that, you set your environment to come on at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., or you can set it up in stages. So you want your machines to turn off at night, I think, because then you're not putting so much power into using the servers. So when they're turned off, you're saving energy, and in the morning, 6 a.m., you start turning on your servers. That's how many you have. We have a couple hundred turned on and available. We have 120 some odd users that are using the system, and that's what we do. We turn everything on at 6, and by the time they start getting it between 7 and 8, everything is there and available. It takes 2 minutes to log in, and things are actually smooth sailing from there.
The first connection into the environment, it has to build a relationship, but Citrix does have a tool now, and really all it does is it opens up a connection. It makes like a service into it. So without it, you would see the first connection, the first app coming up a little slower, and everything else just zip, 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 zip like that because the connection's already established. But again, Citrix does have a tool that came with 6. Yes, yeah. And it makes that connection for you.
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, I'm not even a technician, my staff do all of this stuff, but I think when you log into our environment, you could log into, now we have 68, 70 virtual servers running off of 10 of our server pools. And when a user logs in, they get automatically, through load balancing, they're going to get connected to a particular server. It could be this, it could be XenApp 1 today, it could be XenApp 5 this afternoon. It really depends on the load balancing and stuff. But when they log in, if they connect to a server, and it's the first time they connect to that server, their profile is going to get copied over to that server from our SAN. And once that's copied over, that takes a few, probably 10, 15 seconds tops. Then it's almost like when you're first turning on a computer, you're booting out, but it's a little bit faster now. Your profile will get copied over, and then once they start using it, everything's instantaneous. It's real fast. At least it is in our environment. There is no delay or lag or anything like that. I mean, I'm actually running over on our external gateway. What I'm connecting through right now, it's a 1.54 meg up and down. It's a T1 circuit. We're upgrading this circuit in the next week or two. We've already got the fiber in place, waiting on AT&T to install the equipment. We're upgrading that 1.5 meg circuit to a 100 meg up and down circuit. So the performance enhancement we're going to see connecting from outside of our network is going to be just unbelievable.
And think VPNs, right? How many VPNs do you have deployed in your organization? I mean, people would, that VPN in for whatever reason. They all disappear. All the VPNs disappear. They come in through the net scalers, and we have two physical net scalers, two virtual net scalers for high availability, load balance between our production and our DR environment. So when you log in, you don't know whether you're in production, whether you're at the DR site, but I connect in from home. I like to use this analogy because it's hilarious. I connect in from my daughter's virus-ridden laptop and connect into the environment. No VPN, no worries, no concern that anything's going to get infected. Because you reboot and it's gone. You're back to square one, which brings you to the antivirus. You only got to put it on servers. Just worry about antivirusing your servers. Your desktop environment no longer needs antivirus. When you close that session down and start it up again, it resets to what it was. So the only time that you can actually get your environment infected is if you install if you happen to put a virus into the golden image. So as long as you're doing your job as an administrator,
Yeah, the machine gets the virus.
So with the virus, one question is the images I can see that very clearly. But what about if you have documents, like PDFs or Word documents, what you're storing on my document share? How do you handle that this virus?
well, so you scan the server. You scan the storage. You don't have to scan the desktop. So where is that document? That document's all going to be on the SAN. Right, so all that stuff happens on the SAN. So now you only have to really worry about protecting the SAN.
You know, one of the big things is making sure your VMs are all backed up and you have clean images of them, because if something happens to somebody, let's say your servers get a virus or something, just delete them, push your backups on, and you're right back to where you were. We didn't have a virus, but we did have an issue, and we had to delete one of our VMs and re-import it, and we didn't have any, it was, you know, no problems at all. It was just like nothing ever happened.
I mean, we have vendors connected with this stuff, so we can limit what their access is. And now I don't have to put a VPN on it. It's easy.
So, oh yeah, it's easy.
I mean, the hard work, I'll be honest with you, when he says it's real slow deploying, the hard work is that first year or two. We're still in that second year, and we're still fighting a lot of the battles that he's already fought. And we kind of got slowed up a little bit because we had a SAN upgrade over the summer. Our SAN again reached end of life, and we had a lot of problems with that. But you're doing that work in the back end. The 5-year implementation is exactly right. Is exactly right. That first year, you're going to set up a pilot environment. You're going to build the architecture, and you're going to get maybe 10 users on it. They're all going to be in IT, and they're all going to be learning how this thing works. Right? They're all going to be fighting with it, figuring it out, and asking the problems the users are going to ask. Okay? And then year 2, you really start fighting with more and more of the applications, because I don't care who you are, unless you're a relatively small shop, and even then, it's going to be really, really almost impossible for you to truly know what software you have in your environment until you roll this out. And once you start rolling this out, you hit a desktop, you say, all right, I'm going to move you to the virtual. Well, all right, great. Is this going to work? The hell is that? I have never seen that before in my life. You know, and what does it do? Well, we need it because that's a critical business function. Okay, so now you got to go back and try to, you know, shoehorn that application into the environment. And until you get the experience putting applications in the environment, you're going to need someone to help you do it. Some stuff goes in very easily. Some stuff will fight you tooth and nail. We have OSSI, is headquartered in High Point, and at some point, we're going to be looking at virtualizing the cops. You know, the cop cars, the MDTs in the cars. Jacksonville has already tried this, and they didn't get it. Not to say that Jacksonville isn't awesome at this, they certainly are. But what we're going to do is we're going to hit it again with a different set of eyes. We're going to hit it again from a different perspective. And OSSI and these other 911 and public safety vendors have a vested interest in getting this working. There's not a single city and county that doesn't need this working for police and fire. And they're all bitching about it to all these vendors. So they are working on it. They are going to be working on it. DCI is the biggest problem with that. We also have, our director is on the Citrix board, so we're hoping that helps out a little bit too. So there are challenges, and that actually will wind up being a true VDI, probably because of the DCI requirements. But everything else is app desktop.
That's a question about virtualization as a whole. What would you say, because we have a similar issue with our police cars, would you say start with small implementation within IT and spread out to other departments and do
Yes.
police cars
Yes.
at the end of the very end, or start with police first?
No, hit the
Yeah,
police and that's
We're actually not even virtualizing our police cars. We're not even, at this point, we're not going to virtualize them. But we're virtualizing the sheriff's office, service department, but not the actual mobile data terminals or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, the VDI you don't want to do. You don't want to have a VDI unless you absolutely have to, and that's only because it's harder, it's more expensive, it's more resource intensive, and
I wouldn't say it's harder, it's actually easier to implement than like a Zen app environment, application.
Yeah, but it gives you more management, more stuff you
Yeah,
gotta take care
yeah,
of. I
there
mean, it's
is.
just a pain in the ass. If you can deploy it as an app, right, then you can deploy the app. And you don't have to worry about getting the desktop out there just yet. You can just give them virtual apps. We have people that log in all the time and are running things for Citrix and have no clue that the application that they're using is Citrix. You can also do really cool things like have 2 different versions of IE on the same machine, 2 different versions of Office on the same machine while you're training, because it's running on different servers. You know, try to do IE8 and IE9 on the same machine. You know, so you'd have to have a VM.
I know I shared this with the folks this morning. I actually, we're in year 3 of desktop virtualization. And I was able to actually take what we actually paid for all of our licensing and our thin clients and the whole 9 yards, all the software, everything we had to do to actually virtualize, to get virtualized. And then I took that information and I said, well, I wonder how much it costs to actually virtualize a user versus deploying a desktop computer. So I did. I went down, I sat down, and I can tell you exactly what it costs. Now, the prices it changes every year because every year they drop. It gets easier and easier to keep virtualizing a user. But we use a Wise C10LE thin client. And that is a ThinOS thin client, and it was $259. And then you have to pay for the Wise TCX suite, which is roughly $31. The Citrix Zen desktop license, the initial license, is $233 per user. Windows Remote Desktop, $54, and then I threw in a 19-inch monitor in there, even though it's the same on the desktop. That was $149. So it's roughly $727 to virtualize a user. So I looked at, okay, what is it? Now that's the initial implementation cost. A desktop costs just under $1,000 when you look at everything. Depending on what you're getting. If you're getting an i7 processor, it's going to cost you a lot more. But typically i5, kind of a mid-range PC, it's just under it's $940 is what it came out to, is what it was costing us. Now that was just the hardware costs. Then I looked at, okay, well, how long does it take us to deploy a virtualized user? About 30 minutes to virtualize something. 2 to 5 minutes to put a thin client on their desk and have it fully operational. It would take us 4 hours to deploy a desktop out of the box and actually image the system, put all of our images on there, software, antivirus, all that stuff, take it out to the end user and deploy it. So then I took the average cost, what was the average pay of one of my technicians, and I did an analysis and said, okay, this is what it costs to deploy each desktop. This is what it would cost if we stayed with desktop, 1,000+ desktop computers. This is what it costs if we do thin clients. And the difference is the reoccurring expenses are huge, huge difference for a desktop PC versus a thin client. Thin client, there's no maintenance, but there is some reoccurring costs. And they're minimal. But the reoccurring costs is Wise TCX suite, we have to pay $7.57 a year per user. Citrix Zen desktop maintenance which is the licensing was $233 per user. The annual maintenance is $37.50. And Windows Remote Desktop CALs, $31.57 we have to pay a year for that. So that's $76.64 a year per user. And then I looked at, okay, what is it over a 5-year period? So I added up the initial implementation costs, buying the actual device, and I figured out what it would cost if I can get my,
The other nice thing about the thin clients is there's 0 moving parts.
Okay, so a 5-year cost, including buying everything, the licensing, the whole 9 yards, and recurring expenses for a thin client or a virtualized user is $961.37 for for 5 years. That's almost what it costs just to buy a computer and a monitor. Now, if you throw electrical costs in there, it's $5 roughly a year for a thin client. $5. It's about $50 a year for a computer. Now that's if you have it on 24/7, 365. But if you both had them on, let's say you had them on 12 hours a day, each one of them, you're going to have the same difference in the cost for those between the thin client and the desktop. Desktops are far more expensive. Desktops produce a lot more heat. Thin clients produce almost no heat, no moving parts, no sound, nothing. So
So they last.
they last a lot longer.
I have a question for you on your numbers. There on your thin client, did you include the server cost and the data
Yeah,
center?
not
for that using?
in the actual, in the overall cost for the virtual environment, we include the cost of electricity for our servers, what the cost was for purchasing the servers, getting them up and running, the licensing, the enterprise licensing for our everything is included. And I've got some costs there too. Our server farm, for instance.
At High Point, fully deployed desktops are using redeployed desktops. It's really just the server environment. Fully deployed, the ROI is 13 months. I start receiving money at 13 months.
Our servers, and just, I think these numbers here are actually our virtual servers. I mean, our servers for our Zen server farm. In a non-virtualized environment, the way we had it before, it was $501,000 to maintain our existing servers, and that would be a 5-year replacement cycle. To maintain our virtualized environment, it's $221,000. So the ROI is about 42% for your virtual servers. The desktops, you're going to have, it's a less of an ROI because there are so many pieces to it, the licensing and all of those other things. But the great thing about it is once you've achieved it, you are going to save money every day. You're going to save money in productivity, you're going to save money in electricity, you're going to save money in maintenance, upkeep, everything. It is not an aspect of virtualization, really, you're not going to save money. And that's the great thing about it.
How do your Microsoft licenses for like Office, does that change any, or do you still have to have a license per user?
You have to have a license per user.
Regardless of how many people are connected?
Regardless.
It's not concurrent. The other thing,
Yeah.
you're going to have to pay for a virtualization license, session license, which on the EA, I think it's like $10-15. If you're not, I know you bought it for what, Maggie, you said?
For what now?
The virtualization license that you need from Microsoft.
For Microsoft? Oh, it was like $57.
Yes, or whatever, yeah. That you do have to buy an additional license, but here's the thing, right? It's device independent. All right, it's device independent. If you run Microsoft Office right now at your desk, you run it at home, wherever, their licensure right now is per device. Okay, not per user. With this, that device becomes the virtual infrastructure. So now it doesn't matter. They can access it on their iPad. They can access it on their home laptop. They can access it on a public access terminal. It doesn't matter. And it's easy because now you say, I have 750 licenses of Microsoft Office. You can lock down that session so that only 750 users have access to it. Not concurrent, but they can access it at any point. So managing your licenses is now feasible. You don't have to worry, oh, did somebody install this somewhere and I don't know about it? And if they come and do an audit, SOL, you know exactly what everyone's using and where they're using it. And you can see usage. If you do have a license that's concurrent, if you have something that says, I have 5 concurrent licenses, right? Well, you can lock down the session to 5 concurrent licenses, give it to everybody in your organization. And you know what? You find out over the course of a year, I only have 2 people using this at any given point. Fine, drop 2 licenses, keep it at 3, you have 1 spare. You know, you can save money on software licensing with this significantly if the licensing allows it. Now they're getting a lot smarter and they're building their licensing around this VDI infrastructure. We call it VDI, even though we're not using VDI. But
I'll tell you, one of the really good things, once you're virtualized, is if we went from Office 2003 to Office 2010 overnight. And it was just a matter of saying, okay, point them to this image now.
yeah,
And now they have 2010.
and you can
So-
put both on the desktop.
And
They can see them both.
And the cool thing is, Microsoft does have these little video, what do they call them?
The training videos.
The training videos. And basically what it is, it opens up 2003 or 2007, Office 2007, pretty much the same thing. And you click on the command that you want, and it shows you where it is in 2010. So the end users had all of that on their desktop. So when they came in and we had sent an email out, these videos are out there, blah, blah, blah. And we did have people calling us up and, we got to show them here and there. But for the most part, we got almost no calls. Because those videos are so good and they're so easy to use. You can keep it open all day long.
Did you have any situations in which you had to use, like, dual displays or anything?
Yeah, matter of fact, most of our environment is dual monitors.
Really?
Yeah.
There was
Yep.
an ESS with NCFast, and we got Northwoods and stuff for document management, so every DSS user has full monitors on Wisely.
Now, I have been told, on thin client devices, anything above 2 monitors is real tricky. I haven't tried it yet. We have some users that have 4 monitors, so we're probably not going to use a thin client device for them. We'll probably use something else. But,
I think they're working on that, though. I seem to remember.
I can do 4.
They've got some stuff with that.
There is things that work. Like, but he's writing the factors on that video memory on those thin clients to make it really smooth, because there's a whole lot of real estate. And when you move your mouse around and try to drag, it really does not feel like it does.
You can give them 2 thin clients.
well, a few years ago, nobody had dual monitors.
Yeah.
That was, matter of fact, a few years ago, nobody had flat panels. Now everybody's got a flat panel, or most people have dual monitors, at least that's what I've seen.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, there's another aspect that we probably didn't touch on in the first one, that you should. Think of this also as a DR plan, right? We're used to DRing our data center, right? Oh, I gotta keep the servers safe, I gotta keep the servers replicated, I gotta make sure that I can bring these servers up. That's wonderful, that's all well and good, but how the hell are your users going to access it when their computers are not there, right? The applications that have the clients are not there. They're in the building still that's got flames looking out the window, right? With this infrastructure, you can stand up people at their own house. You've got an epidemic. They can work from home. If their manager approves it, they can work from home regardless of what's going on in the world. If they have an iPad, they can work. We've got downtown wireless right now. In conjunction with that, I can bring up the finance department in the parking lot.
Send them to the park.
No such thing as a snow day anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. BYOD, you can't do BYOD without virtualization. It's impossible legally, right? This is the only way to do it because there's nothing on the device. All right, somebody steals that person's iPad, great, they still don't have the credentials to log in.
And, I don't know, we haven't really done BYOD in our county yet. We don't even have really a wireless infrastructure. We're actually doing that this year. But we have a mobile device management software that we use called ZenPrize. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. So, we can remote wipe devices. And we're going to have a policy that once we get this wireless network up, if you want to connect your personal device to our network, we got to put MDM on it, we got to control it. Just the way it is. If you want to put it on our network. But that'll probably limit the number of people that actually want to do that.
You mentioned NCFast and Northwoods and things like that. Do you have any thin clients or anything that are actually running like USB scanners or can't run?
Yes, our entire Northwoods and Ashe County is completely virtualized.
Really?
Yeah, we are running Windows 7. We're not doing application-based desktops, from Zen server because Northwoods doesn't play nice with the scanners. The only problem we're having is that one of our remote locations, it's connected by 7 megs of Ethernet, and the signature pads, you know, USB is a chatty protocol, so you can't change the fact that the signature pads don't work that well. We're putting in Ashe County's very unique. We got a big mountain, 3,000, you know, we're at 3,000 feet, it's at 4,000 feet, right in the middle of the county. So we're putting some either ubiquity air fiber, which is a gigabit, that's just now getting released, or I've got this other idea to put it out there. But anyway, we're going to have gigabit going from that remote office. So all of our scanners, signature pads, everything is all going through Windows 7, running on wide Zenith thin clients, and then the servers on the back end are HP GL80 or the G5s. I think they're G5s. So I've got 5 of those servers. So now our DSS department consists of 65 users. And as of right now, it's 100%. So, and those affected by the signature pads, it's literally 10 people out of all of those. So they're dealing with it until we get this fiber link up, or air fiber. So it works really, really well. And if
And the thin clients have, a lot of them have Wi-Fi.
yeah, absolutely.
So you need a training room somewhere. You don't have to worry about, oh, shit, I don't have any network connections in here.
Yeah.
I got Wi-Fi. Okay, there you go, here's a training center. That's it.
That's matter of fact, our HR department gave me about 3 days notice and said, hey, we've got a training session that we have this company coming down here. We need about 20 computers set up on our training room. Can you guys do this? Yeah, no problem. We went over there, and in one afternoon we set up 20 thin clients, put them on it. Really, most time it's just actually wheeling the stuff over there, taking out the boxes. And then we just plugged it in, and we were good to go. We didn't have to configure anything. On the Active Directory side, we created some dummy accounts for the training sessions, and then we were done.
You mentioned HR. HR has a unique challenge with this environment. Don't know if you've seen any of the lawyer talk or whatever, but if you have non-exempt employees who have the ability to work after hours or from home, that poses a unique employment issue, because they can work from home, log the hours themselves, and then come and demand payment for those hours. Okay, that is an employment, there's a federal loophole, essentially. You're not going to have a lot of people do it. The people that are going to do it, honestly, are the ones that are about to get fired anyway, and they're going to want to get whatever check they can get before they leave. You know what I mean? That's really the reality of how that's going to work. So we have had to include HR disclaimers on the Citrix website, the Web Connect, that people can connect, because you can connect in through a website the same as you do WebNet. And we've had to put them on that as well for the same reason. So there is some, some more challenges that will be coming your way. However, managing the desktop becomes significantly easier once they're in the environment.
Can you change your login hours in AD?
Yeah, you could change your login hours, but here's the thing, I don't know when that person's working valid O2. I mean, we've got 1,500 employees. I would have to have the supervisors tell me, oh, I'm letting this person work, and that's just not going to work. It's just not going to happen. But the device independence, right? Something dies, you walk up, plug it up another device, you're gone. I mean, when I was talking to Citrix, the 2 Citrix guys, me and my Windows manager were kind of having a side conversation, and they were over in the other side of the room. And the one guy looks at the other guy and goes, man, that's nice thin client laptop. I hadn't seen that one from Wise or HP or whoever. He's like, oh yeah, you like it? He says, yeah, how's that Wise one? Oh, that one's great. And they swap laptops. And he says, yeah, I'll get it back to you in a couple days.
There's nothing stored on it.
Yeah. I mean, that ability, when somebody wants to go on the road and they need a laptop, and you grab something off the shelf and say, here. And they go about their merry way. That's all you do is hand them something.
That's a great thing for HR too, because there's no data stored on it.
Yeah.
They have access to all the same information.
How are you handling inventory? Because I know that's got it's a handling PC inventory. When you do anything with thin clients as far as
We have a database solution that when we unbox the thin client, we put a barcode on it, scan the barcode, put the location, and it's logged in the database.
Tracker, aren't you?
What's that?
Are you using Tracker for your inventory or something?
We have Tracker. We're not using Tracker for inventory. We don't like Tracker for the inventory piece. I bought a completely separate solution. I just can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. And it's got, wireless scanners. You just scan, you can walk around with it, and then you dock it, and it syncs with the database. So the minute you dock it and syncs it, my staff that are on the other side of the county can actually, they'll have the same information that everybody else has. So it's updated instantly. The one thing about Citrix, when I was working in the federal government, all general officers, stars, 1 through 4 stars, have a Citrix account, which means they can log in from anywhere in the world in a secure site and actually have access to their information. It's one of the, that was my first, I think that was my very first introduction to Citrix was, I had a general officer come visit the base, and he said, yeah, I need to get access to Citrix. I'm like, what's Citrix? What the heck's that? So I found out, I got into the site and logged him in, and I was like, wow, I didn't know they had this. I didn't really know what Citrix was back then, but it's pretty cool because, if they're gonna put general officers on a Citrix account and set them up in a Citrix virtualized environment, and they've been doing that for years and years and years and years. This isn't new, Citrix is not new. Citrix has been around 30 plus years,
I remember using Metaframe in the 80s. The stuff is solid.
Yeah, from the desktop side, you really can't beat Citrix.
And we used to
There's no other company out there that does what
the big thing for Citrix, their big name where they came around was, I had a slow connection somewhere. Everything was thick client, right? And you had to shove all that data over that line, and some of those applications just weren't usable. So people were using Citrix so that they could get applications out. Well, it's essentially the same technology. They just had a paradigm shift and said, well, instead of just worrying about shoving it out to outlying satellite offices, why don't we just do it in-house all the time? And that's the real thing. You're going to have a little bit of pushback deploying it because it is going to look different, it is going to act different, it's going to be a little bit more restrictive, as restrictive as you want. I allow pictures on the background. He doesn't. It's up to you, But what you give them, especially the exempt employees specifically, is you're giving them that ability to work from anywhere. One of my network guys, my Windows manager, he's a soccer player, right? So he's out playing soccer one night, runs off the field because somebody called him. He rebooted a server through Citrix, and then from his phone, and then got back on the field and kept playing. That ability is huge. I ran AutoCAD. Through the Citrix demo cloud, I had AutoCAD on an iPhone 3GS. I handed it to my assistant city manager, who was a former engineer, and he saw it. You can't run AutoCAD, but it's easy.
I was skiing in Switzerland last February, and I had a big client here in the States that has over 200 long-term care facilities that they actually host their database. I come down the hill at Zermatt, caught signal on the Wi-Fi, they had a problem. I was 6 hours ahead, skied over to the hotel, logged in with my Citrix account to their environment. We rocked it out. 30 minutes later, I was back out on the slopes. You can literally get into it from everywhere and be secure.
Just before you deploy it, go visit somebody that has it. Go visit 2 or 3 places that have it. Make some contacts with them. See it. See how it works in real life. Right? Don't do this without help. Don't try to do it in-house with some training.
Yeah, you'll run into it. You get so frustrated with some of the things that you run into that there's other people out there that have already done this. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel.
Don't half-ass it either.
We've got probably 1,000 pages of documentation We have documentation Citrix doesn't even have.
High availability, keep that in your mind always.
Yeah, so,
Dual controllers,
Yeah.
dual databases, clusters, dual net scalers.
dual administrators.
Yep.
Don't have one guy that knows it.
Have a Mack truck plan. You know,
It's a different way of doing
my Mack
business.
truck,
I mean,
that's-
you know, it's definitely a different way of doing business. And I know, session's pretty much over, but, I was able to reduce, and I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, he's, got rid of people. I did reduce my staff by 2 people, but I did it through attrition. When I got into the county, I knew I wanted to virtualize, and I had one empty vacant slot, so I just held on to it. I didn't hire anybody. And then I had another guy that I ended up firing for something completely different. And I thought, I'm going to hang on to that slot too and just see how we do as far as our workload. And our workload was manageable, and I thought, okay, no problem. Once we're fully virtualized, the workload is going to be, it's going to be easy. So I took those 2 positions that I went to the county manager and I said, look, I'm going to give you this much money and all these benefits back to the county. I just want 50% so that I can give my staff pay increases. And not only pay increases, I reclassified my staff and gave them huge pay increases. So, and I still turned 50% back into the county.
You don't have to.
So there's
the other thing, the other option you have is you're going to have staff that there are going to be desktop staff that aren't. You're not going to really need. What you can do is retask them, provide more services in the organization, give them a career path, give them the opportunity to move up the ladder a little bit. So when you do something like this, you're going to have desktop. You have desktop support people that just support desktops, so they're going to be scared of this because they're going to think that they're going to be out of a job.
Here's a little trick too. This is, I was a financial analyst for a lot of years in the federal government, the Air Force. And I dealt with manpower and manning issues and things like that, and very large budgets. One thing I learned how to do is justify requirements. So I knew by going into a virtual environment, I wanted to give my staff more money, and I thought, okay, how am I going to do that? Turning in those 2 positions is one way, but I reclassified. I didn't just give them like step increases. I reclassified one of my staff, well, 2 of them, from a 70 to an 80, which is 10 grades difference. And then it wasn't an 80 step 1, it was like an 85 or something like that. So I was able to do that, but what I did was I used virtualization as part of my job description. Desktop virtualization technician. I can't remember I named different ones, different things. But I went in and got creative with the job descriptions, and I started adding all these things in there. Now, they don't know. I just said this is a much more difficult environment to manage, much more difficult environment to learn. These guys need to be a higher quality technician and blah, blah, blah. So I rewrote the job descriptions and I reclassified my staff, except for some of the lower level desktop technicians. I gave them all more money. I was able to justify it through virtualization as well. Because we actually were saving a lot of money on top of that. Just the servers, when we virtualized our servers, we got a 42% ROI almost immediately.
You may want to put the Citrix, if you are split servers and desktop, you may want to put Citrix in the desktop because you're still going to have them dealing with the users. And, that is a different skill set than dealing with servers. Dealing with users is more of a, you have to be a psychologist, you have to be, everything else. You have to be a friend, you have to be a buddy. You got to be all that. And it's different. The server guys, I know I was one of them. You think, well, I'm a higher quality technical. Yet, yes, you're more technical, but the desktop guys are the ones that are dealing with the users. They're your customer service. So put the Citrix there, and you'd be well spent as well.
And once you're in a virtual environment, if some user runs into an issue, oh, this isn't working or whatever, on almost every occasion, it's almost an immediate fix. Sometimes it's just a server reboot, boom, 5 minutes, everybody's back to normal. Because sometimes something might lock up on the server. Just reboot it and you're good. So, I mean, that's a plus and a minus. If you have an issue with one person, you might have an issue with 400 people, you know. Even though 400 people don't know there's an issue. But it's usually a very quick fix. So you don't, you know, have a lot of extended problems that, you know, with extended outages, or you have users that you have to go and reformat their desktop or their hard drive and put it in. You don't have to do any of that crap anymore.
If you think
Most of the fixes are instantaneous, they're real quick.
If you think you know your infrastructure, you're going to learn a lot about it deploying this. You may think you know your infrastructure, but until you deploy this, you don't know your infrastructure. You will learn your infrastructure. You know exactly where your bottlenecks are, whether you know where they are now or not. You'll find them.
We are officially over in town. We'll be glad to stand up here for a few minutes and talk to you guys. If you guys want to stick around, we'll keep talking.
Yeah, if anybody wants any, you know, if you guys are actually thinking about virtualizing, you know, we've got a lot of information. We're more than happy to have anybody come out and do a site visit. Okay, a lot of companies do that already.
Heck, I'm going to go see it.
Yeah. Even after you've already done it, see somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
learn
going to go see
something.
it.
Thanks for coming out, guys.
Thank you.
You know what, I've given them all away, but